shit your pants and dive right in. That's how you got to do it. Hi, I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. There are pre-order links in the show notes below for all of those books.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
Please follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli, on Instagram at Tom_Scioli, and support my Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search Tom Scioli.
Follow the show on Instagram at total_recall_show.
So I want to talk about Zelda 2. We've talked about Mario, we've talked about Zelda, but Zelda 2 is like the one that gets the least love. You know?
The first time I ever played Zelda 2, I believe we rented it from Farmore.
Okay.
And it was the same experience with the Mario 2. I was like, this is different. This is And my buddy Colin had the Zelda games. He had Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, but you could only, we didn't, I never owned, I actually never owned the original Legend of Zelda or Zelda 2.
Okay.
I only know them from my friend and from we tried to rent every game they had at Farmore, so.
Well, Zelda 2, I loved the first Legend of Zelda so much. And Zelda 2, I kept checking the dates for its release, and then I'd go to the store and be like, is it in yet? Have my dad drive me to the store.
88.
Is it? Oh no, it's pushing. And then you'd read in Nintendo Power, oh, there's a chip shortage, a global chip shortage, and this and that. And it's and then when it finally came out, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my good luck. And then I got home, but it was late at night. I played a little bit of it and lost all my guys, and then had the Return of Ganon, where Ganon laughs at you, and then my parents were okay, you gotta come up to bed, and I was like, when I grow up, I'm gonna stay up all night and play video games. And now I rarely do that, but as I got into it, it was like you were saying with Super Mario 2. It was I really liked the first Zelda. I wanted more of the same. This is too. I love it. I'm enjoying it, but it's not. It's not doing for me what the first Zelda did. The first Zelda, it felt less like a game and more like an ecosystem and a real living world that you drop yourself into and you explore. Zelda 2 felt a little more sort of artificial, a little more oh, this is a game. And it's it's supposedly a much larger world than the first Zelda. And when they have that map you move through, and then there's a part of the Zelda 2 map where you see the entirety of the first Zelda game. You can go to that region. But again, it doesn't feel that way because you're not trekking through, you're kind of going on this abbreviated map where you're kind of fast forwarding through the world, and then occasionally an encounter happens, and then you zoom in, or you find some place and you zoom in, and it just, felt,
didn't have the same feel.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a living, breathing world.
And then I'm assuming they went platformer because of Mario, the side scrolling.
Yeah, I don't know what the thought was behind it. It wasn't
Castlevania.
It wasn't necessarily bad, but again, it just felt less. It just was such a part of Zelda's identity was that sort of top-down view, and to take that away,
there was a lot of different ROM hacks.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. That was the thing.
Different people have different takes or different versions of it.
With Zelda 2, it was kind of it felt small, even though it probably is a larger game. It felt smaller, and it also felt less there was less of a sense of discovery, because everything felt very much hey, go here and get this thing, and then you get it. Go there and do, as opposed to the way things kind of organically emerge out of Zelda 1. And it also felt shorter, because Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, is the most epic, longest game I had ever played. Couldn't have ever envisioned there being a game this immersive at that time. And then if you complete it, there's a whole other game you get to play. You get to play the second quest, where it's a completely different game, And Zelda 2, which has 2 in the name, does not have a second quest. So that felt it had a lot to live up to. It couldn't possibly live up to. I appreciate it for what it is, but yeah.
I might losing my mind because I I was doing some work, and sometimes I will like put on like playthroughs of video games just to have on like in the background, like as like
I love it,
and just to have them on. And I did had the playthrough on of Zelda 2, and like it felt like it was only like 2.5 hours, or like was that? Is that like?
Well, I mean,
that short? Or they speed?
Everybody does their speed runs. Though. That's what everything's about. I had the Game and Watch. Like the recent Game & Watch where the Zelda, I had the Mario one, the Zelda one, and I played all the way through Zelda 1 and stuff. It was, really cool, defeated it on there. And I was playing Zelda 2, but what's on there, you can play the Japanese versions of the games also. You scroll over to the Japanese language, and it's not just a translation. The Japanese version of Zelda 2 does have subtle but very real differences. And so I played the Japanese version of Zelda 2 and had a lot of fun with it. Like it felt like a new game. It was just different enough to kind of feel like a new game. And I had a lot of fun playing it that way. And then, I started having these videos showing up on my YouTube feed of these ROM hacks of like these alternate, like these other Zelda 2s that like fans had made.
Yeah.
And these things were blowing my mind. And again, it feels like, okay, it's delivered because that game system, like the mechanics, that system for Zelda 2 is pretty great. Like it's like we have the Zelda 1 system, but this Zelda 2 system is pretty cool. It's just I don't feel it was like pushed to its limit, and then it just gets abandoned completely. But so there's a couple of like fan made sequels that look super cool. There's one called like something Amida, the Return of Amida, or the Quest, which is like it's just like they took all and they didn't. They made subtle changes to the graphics, but it's still like 8-bit Nintendo NES kind of stuff, which is like that's what I don't want the graphics to get substantially better. I want to play more in that Zelda 2 world, and so they created this completely different thing using all the bits and pieces, but this completely new one, this completely new adventure. And then they did one. It was called like the Winter Solstice or whatever, where it's like it's Link in this like snowy setting, and he's got like a hood and stuff.
Dude, you're right, because like when I mentioned like the 2-hour playthrough, I was looking through, and the Winter Solstice, Matt from like he's on like he's one of the guys I think from Cinemassacre, but he did he played through the Winter Solstice, and he did it in 2 videos, but each video is 10 hours long. So it's 20 hours. I'm like, holy shit! Like,
because what these ROM hack, what these like fan made ones are doing is they're like giving you like what you wish Zelda 2 was in the first place. Because we've had 30 years to kind of stew on it, and the technology is just more accessible, the know-how's more accessible, where like the stuff where they'd have to like bust their ass and work on these super slow computers back in the 80s, like we couldn't like so it's just a matter of like devoting yourself to this project that you can't really monetize. But your love, your passion for the material. I mean, that's what we're seeing in sort of every sector. But so these the fans have made these like superior, like I've only watched the videos, I haven't played them, but they sure seem to be superior experience. And again, like I love Zelda 2, warts and all, and it is a complete experience. It is like a primetime kind of thing. It does work, but like I wanted it to be a little more expansive, and that's what these things are. And then there's one that I think is like the newest of them all, and it's called like the Zelda 2 Revised Edition.
Oh,
and it's like beautiful. And again, like the guy remade it, pixel by pixel, but like made it kind of like widescreen, like so it's not just like this, it's like this. And then he added all kinds of subtleties and just made it again like a more immersive experience, a more and it still has that same game mechanic, but it feels like more organic. And like one of the differences between the Zelda 2, the American version of Zelda 2, and the Japanese version is there's like a little bit of animation on that map screen, so like the water kind of twinkles and stuff. And where in the American version it doesn't, it's all pretty static. But in this expanded version, there's animation on the map, but also subtle, and he's also substantially changed like the world of the game and stuff. But like the map has like little gradations where like the pathway there's a couple intermediate steps before the pathway becomes desert, and it's a really nice balance between sprucing things up a little but still keeping it in that like Zelda world. And so I mean, just one of the things, like just off the bat, if you're watching these videos, is like at the beginning of Zelda 2, you start off in that like temple where Zelda is sleeping. You kind of start there, and that's like, you have to wake the sleeping princess, go through all this stuff. But like when you walk out of that castle, all of a sudden you're in that overworld map, and he's just walking around. But in this, there's like degrees of getting out of there. So it's this like castle in the middle of an island. And so like if you go out the back door, if you go to the left, now there's like, you're in the side view still, and you're like on the terrain of that island fighting Octoroks and stuff. And then you go in the water and you can walk through the water, or you can go to the right and also go down a path. But it's not like you just like pop out of that close-up world and into this like map world. You kind of get there by degrees in a really fun way.
Tom, like I want to like support these ROM hackers and like pick up one. But
that's what I want to get a cartridge. Like I want to like I don't know, maybe you can only play them on emulators, but I'd like to buy a cartridge because that's something that's been around forever, homebrew. Like, and you would see it with like Atari 2600. That was like the but like yeah, there's like NES homebrews. Like I'm assuming, but like I was scrounging around, but I guess like you can't really like openly sell them, because it's like a weird like I don't know what Nintendo's view is of these. Like to me, it's like Nintendo put these on your they're like
the Switch like marketplace. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, like I know it's not Zelda, but if I was going to the next game I would get, I was going to check on Steam even.
I think maybe these might be on Steam.
Is the Castlevania Simon's
Quest.
Well, that I watched like a bunch of videos on that. I'm like, this looks fucking spectacular.
The changes that they make in the Zelda 2 games, I mean, they've made completely different games for the Amida one and the Winter Solstice one. And then the Zelda 2 remake is like a very rich re-envisioning of it with profound changes while still keeping the spirit and the look, but profound and beautiful changes. And then the Castlevania 2 seems like this guy was very disciplined in his approach. He made subtle changes that improved the overall experience, kind of making it into a better version of what it is without like completely, rethinking it.
It looks like the graphics look 60. It looks like the Super Nintendo version of it.
Okay, because I saw a Castlevania 2 that the graphics look like NES.
Oh,
graphics.
There was I think
okay, you might have been looking
at a different one.
I mean, because these kind of things have been going on for a while, and there's a bunch of different ones, and these were just kind of the ones that stood out to me as like the strongest ones. But there are ones with, and the guy who I saw who made the Castlevania 2, he said, there have been ones with like improved graphics, but he wants to make a Castlevania 2 that is like what he thought Castlevania 2 was going to be back in the 80s, but then you get it. And I'm the same way. Like, I was very hyped for Castlevania 2. I loved the first Castlevania. I was excited for Castlevania 2. I looked at all the maps and stuff in Nintendo Power, and it looked so good. And you got that great cover of Nintendo Power where he's holding the head of Dracula.
Great. Can we just appreciate, like, well, my bud Don had all, like, basically he had, like, every Nintendo Power. Mm-hmm. It was a sad day when he recycled them.
Oh,
we gotta get them back. We gotta get them back, Don. I love it. But, like, looking at Nintendo Power at a full, wasn't like just the thrill of seeing the whole map laid out on the page.
So beautiful.
Like that's
such a beautiful thing.
Like one of the best things I've ever seen. Like when
maps are just fascinating to begin with. And so here's a map of something.
I'm like, really how did they? Like it's breathtaking actually.
And so like I was so excited, and then they had like little like spot illustrations and stuff, in the margins for Castlevania 2, like little skeletons and things that they drew in there around the map and stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
And then when I finally played Castlevania 2, it was a disappointment for all those reasons that they talk about, and like what they kind of improved with these fixes, because it was like a little too it was a little bit wonky.
The map was wonky.
And there were like little things about the game, like
the heart,
unfair things, and then yeah, things that just didn't, like, it just needed a little more baking, and so that's what this guy did. He like baked it a little longer, but still, you know,
like the townspeople they said would give you conflicting.
Yeah, they give you like weird information and sometimes just say nonsense. And then the Zelda 2, like I really want to drop everything and play those Zelda 2s. I just haven't done. I'm not versed enough in that world. Like, I guess. I'll do a little more digging to see how I can actually play. Because I was watching these videos and I'm like, I don't want to watch too much of this video because I really want to play this game. They also did an Ocarina of Time one where it's Zelda 2, but then trying to translate the Zelda 2 look and feel, but then translate it into the story and the game of Ocarina of Time. So like a side-scrolling, you know.
The first Castlevania like I ever saw was actually in kindergarten. Somebody brought in the Tiger handheld.
Oh, okay.
It was Simon's Quest handheld, and I was like that was my
your first.
It was
for me. It was the NES version, and then there was like an arcade version of Castlevania at like the Swim Club that
awesome.
that I couldn't believe, with like a little bit like more beefed up graphics. I want to do some more digging with this stuff. Like, I just learned about this stuff this morning.
Find that 16-bit version of Castlevania 2 and get it and play that.
Yeah, I want to get a hold of all this stuff. I would rather have a cartridge and play it on my NES than use an emulator, but gladly. And if it's on Steam, play it. But I just wonder how that would even work. But yeah, it is interesting because there's that like indie gamer scene that's been going on for a while. And it is like, oh, now it's like very easy to make, like, all the tools are there for making an NES type of game. And so that's kind of been like the NES or SNES has been, that aesthetic has kind of been the focus of indie game community. So like to actually like directly engage with this stuff.
There's an NES game, a Pittsburgh themed one. It was like Haunted Halloween 85 or something.
Yeah, I saw that, and they were selling that at like local stores here.
I wish somebody's got to make the Total Recall game.
Yeah. Again, this was all today, so it's all very fresh for me. But the other thing I saw was there's a thing called The Legend of Zelda Ancient Dungeon. And what it is, it's like, it's a ROM hack of The Legend of Zelda, the first Legend of Zelda, but they make it into like a rogue game.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're just in the underworld and it's randomized. Like, I mean, there's a couple different modes.
I love
but there's
that
a randomized
view.
mode, where you're in and you just, it's just like this endless dungeon crawl. Every time you play, it's different. Like, that looks like a lot of fun.
That reminds me of like one of my all-time. I love Solstice.
Solstice is great, yeah.
And but I love that
the
view.
isometric. Solstice has the isometric view. Yeah.
Yeah, there's people like you're doing great work.
Yeah,
out
it's
there.
interesting. Like, it does make sense that we've had decades to kind of stew on this stuff, and then the accessibility, like that one, that like sort of deluxe remake of Zelda 2, was made with Game Maker. Now, I don't know, like, Game Maker is kind of like a name that's been around a really long time. Like, when I was a kid, there was Gary Kitchen's Game Maker from Activision, and it was like a game making utility that you could get for your computer, and you could make games that were sort of on par technically with like Pitfall. And there's like a version of Pitfall that sort of comes sort of preloaded with it, but you can make stuff in that, in that vicinity. But I mean, you could also make like shooters and stuff, but I'm just like, in terms of like graphics and mechanics and stuff, you could make games that are that accomplished. I don't know if they ever made any like commercial releases using Gary Kitchen's Game Maker. Like, I wonder if A Boy and His Blob was kind of made that way, because it kind of feels that like that.
That's a great one.
Yeah, but like, so then, there was the Gary Kitchen's Game Maker, and then a few years later, there was a thing that was just called Game Maker for like the PC, where you can make your own game. So I don't know if Game Maker is a generic enough name. I don't know if it's just like, but like, apparently the guy who made this deluxe Zelda 2 did it on Game Maker, which is sort of like a feat in itself. It's not like he took like the actual, like he built it from the ground up on Game
That's
Maker.
awesome. I think the one I would try is the Winter Solstice.
It looks, it's a different look, like setting it in the winter with all the white and the snow and giving Link a hood. It does give it a different aesthetic. They all look stellar.
we should do a follow-up episode to this one where after we
play
these games and like I'm gonna check Steam because I've had Steam on the brain because I'm going to get we might want to check it out for like a or talk about it for when we do our Indiana Jones stuff. I'm going to purchase. They have on there the Fate of Atlantis for $5. Point and click. I'm going in, Tom. I'm going in.
Have you ever played Fate of Atlantis?
Back in the
I played it back in the day too, but it's like so long.
It's been so long, and like my buddy had it. My buddy Brian.
Yeah, my friend had it too.
I thought it like looked beautiful. LucasArts, like we should do a LucasArts. Loom. There's a game called Loom.
Yes, it's
Monkey Island.
Yes, so we can do the Space Quest series. We could do, what was the one Maniac Mansion? The
Oh
one
my god, yeah. That dude Matt was like he had 2 episodes. Each episode's 10 hours just him playing. I'm like, looks delicious.
They have like long plays and speed runs and stuff for these games. Again, I wanted to just watch all, but then I'm also like, I want to actually play this game.
I saw some views. Yeah. Putting it in the snow is such a great idea.
I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. All 3 of those books are available for pre-order in the show notes below.
I'm at Zeoli.
Please follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli, on Instagram at Tom_Scioli, and support my Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search Tom Scioli.
We'll see out there the Total Recall game. Like, I'm always coming out of a Porta-John or something. Or like
I was going to say, you won't see us for a while because we're going to be going down this rabbit hole playing all these games. Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like, as a kid, I just wanted these games to go on forever. I just wanted to be able to immerse myself in this game and like I could just do that like forever. And Zelda, the first Zelda was pretty darn close to that. You really could almost play that forever. And Zelda 2, you couldn't. It like came to an end at a certain point. And like this idea of like a sprawling Zelda 2, like
pre-Twitch, I would go with my buddies when we would play games. I would just like, we would sit on the couch and like, we would be watching someone playing the game, and I wish it would like we'd spend all day doing that. Like somebody would take turns and like it would. I do want to
play because like these games, they look so beautiful and stuff, but there's also like a subtlety to the art of like game design and like making everything like just the right. So like I want the game to play and feel as great as it like looks to watch. So that's the last piece of the puzzle. Like maybe, you start playing it and it's like, the balance is a little off. It's maybe a little too sprawling. Like maybe less is more. Like it might be like an opportunity to kind of like appreciate Zelda 2 even more. But if these things live up to the promise of what I'm seeing, that would be great.